Oh, we're gonna get started. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and citizens of the 4th Congressional District. Welcome to day number 2 of Congressman Hank Johnson's 3-series grants workshop. We invite you to participate. Yesterday was a great day. Yesterday, we started off with how to start a nonprofit. And today we're gonna do intro to government funding, the grants process. If you have any questions or concerns with regards to grants, please feel free to contact our office. Ms. Candace Williams is our grants coordinator who coordinated this event, and she will be available to help you. Our office number is 770-987-2291, and Candace's email is candace.williams@mail.house.gov. Thank you, Candace, for a great program. And now I'm going to put it in the hands of a great man, the esteemed gentleman from the 4th Congressional District of Georgia, our Congressman Hank Johnson. Congressman.
Thank you, Eric, and good morning, nonprofit leaders and those who are interested in serving. As the Congressman representing Georgia's 4th Congressional District, I'm very excited about day 2 of our grants workshop. Nonprofit organizations are the pillar of our communities, and it is my greatest hope that you will walk away from today's workshop equipped with essential information about government funding so that your nonprofit organization can better serve our communities. This workshop is geared towards individuals and organizations that seek basic knowledge about how federal grant funding works. This workshop will educate you on the overall landscape of the grants process, including funding cycles and types of grants. And I'd like to take this time to thank Judy Cesar and Grants.gov for providing information on how to apply for grants online. Before Ms. Cesar begins, let's look at an overview of the grants process.
We would like to welcome you to Congressman Hank Johnson's office and the overview of the grants process. Whether you're an individual or organization with little to no experience in federal funding, this video will provide you with essential information on the overall grants process. Let's begin with a brief history on the federal grant policy. In 1977, the Federal Grant and Cooperative Agreement Act was passed to guide federal agencies on how to utilize federal funds, particularly by defining the roles of contracts, cooperative agreements, and grants. To help facilitate the new law, the Office of Management and Budget published guidance that directed agencies to ensure that funds be used specifically for assistance-based projects and programs. Federal grants are embedded in the Constitution and called to promote the general welfare. The Executive Office of the President, of which OMB is part, helps to implement the laws through executive orders and guidance that define administrative rules. Before we delve deeper into grants, let's discuss appropriations. Appropriation is a law of Congress that provides an agency with budget authority. It allows the agency to incur obligations and to make payments from the U.S. Treasury for specified purposes. Appropriations are definite or indefinite. Definite, which means it is a specific sum of money, or indefinite, an amount for such sums as may be necessary. Let's continue our discussions on appropriations. Appropriation bills are to be signed by the President by October 1st, the beginning of the federal fiscal year. The President submits a detailed budget request to Congress around February for the upcoming fiscal year. House and Senate propose budget resolutions, discuss differences, and vote on a final version. The President receives conference reports and signs or vetoes appropriation bills. To break this down further, grant policies are made within 3 stages. In the first stage, the Congress appropriates funds to federal agencies and passes other grant-related legislation. In the second stage, the Executive Office of the President issues guidance for implementing the legislation. In the final stage, grant-making agencies develop administrative policies based on guidance. The life cycle of grant funding has 3 phases: pre-award, award, and post-award. Let's now discuss the pre-award phase. In the early stages of the grants process, the grant-making agency plans and develops a funding program based on its mission, the administration, and congressional initiatives. The grant opportunity is then planned and announced. Once potential applicants have identified an opportunity to apply for, they need to register with Grants.gov. Applicants should also check the funding opportunity for additional registration requirements specified by the grant-making agency. When an application has been submitted, the application is retrieved by the grant-making agency and screened for compliance. If it passes initial screening, the application is routed to the appropriate agency program for consideration and review. To recap, the federal budget resolution is approved and the awarding agency assigned. The agency develops a funding program based on the mission of the agency, congressional initiative, and administration. The funding opportunity is then published. Prospective applicants should register via Grants.gov. Once the application is completed, the awarding agency will review the application. We will now discuss the most exciting phase for an organization, the award phase. When the review process has been completed, the funding agency notifies the applicants whether or not they have been awarded a grant. The agency also begins working with the award recipient to finalize the legal framework for the funding agreement. Following this, the funds are dispersed. After an applicant receives a notice of award and the funds have been dispersed, they will begin their project. The award recipient is responsible for meeting the administrative, financial, and programmatic reporting requirements of the award. The final phase is the post-award phase. After an award has been dispersed, a grants management officer at the funding agency oversees an awardee's reporting compliance. This process extends across the life of the grant award and involves reviewing reports submitted by the awardees. Representatives from the grantor agency may perform on-site visits with the project director and implementation staff. Oversight may also occur in the form of auditing. To recap, the grant management officer oversees reporting compliance through site visits and audits. Reports are then reviewed to ensure requirements are met. Once completed, the grant cycle ends. We will now discuss eligibility based on organization type. Determining whether you are eligible to apply for and receive a federal grant is very important. If you're not legally eligible for a specific funding opportunity, you would waste a lot of time and money completing the application process when you cannot actually receive the grant. When considering eligibility, the first step is to know what type of organization you represent, or whether you are applying as an individual. Let's review various types of organizations to give you a better understanding. Government organizations. That's any state, county, city, township, special district, and/or Native American tribal government. Education organization. That's an independent school district, public and state-controlled institutions of higher education, and private institutions of higher education. Public housing organization. That's basically public housing authorities. Nonprofit organization. Nonprofits having a 501c3 status with the IRS, other than an institution of higher education, and nonprofits that do not have a 501c3 status with the IRS, other than institutions of higher education. For-profit organizations. That's organizations other than small businesses. Small businesses. Small business grants may be awarded to companies meeting the size standards established by the U.S. Small Business Administration. And finally, individuals. That's people who submit an application for a funding opportunity on their own behalf. Please note that most of the funding opportunities on Grants.gov are for organizations, not individuals. Let's now turn our attention to the types of federal grants. The first grant we will discuss are mandatory grants. Mandatory grants are non-competitive, funded by law, and eligible applicants must be awarded. Let's now discuss the two types of mandatory grants. The first type are block grants. Block grants are typically awarded to states and/or local governments. They provide federal assistance for broadly defined purposes such as mental health and homelessness. They are not tied to a legislative formula. The second are formula grants. Formula grants involve the way in which grant funding is allocated to recipients, typically government agencies, and awarded based on statistical criteria. An example of mandatory grant would be Medicaid. We are now going to discuss discretionary grants. They are much different than mandatory grants in the fact that they are competitive awards that allow the federal agency to select the grant recipient. This is based on merit and eligibility. An example of a discretionary grant would be the Violence Against Women or Homeless Assistance Grant. There are several major discretionary grant agencies through the federal government. Please take about 30 seconds to review examples of their focus areas. Here are some helpful tips that may be beneficial as you begin your organization's journey to seeking federal funding. You will want to register with federal grant agencies such as sam.gov and grants.gov. sam.gov is how organizations are awarded money. The U.S. federal government will no longer require organizations to get a DUNS number for registration in sams.gov, beginning on April 4, 2022. Look at the awarding agency's website for which you are interested in the grant opportunity. Review their priorities and include their language in your application. Explain how your organization's needs align with theirs. Here are a few more tips as you continue your journey in learning about the grants process. Please keep in mind that federal grant applications can take 100 to 125 hours to complete. This is extremely important when reviewing application deadlines. An organization cannot pay grant writers out of future funds unless specifically mentioned in the grant opportunity. Typically, the organization should be in operation a minimum of 2 years after receiving their 501c3 status. Ideally, they should also have a minimum of 12 months of experience in the project they are seeking federal funding for. When brainstorming the organizational structure of your team, including the following may prove to be helpful. This includes having strategic planning, governance, human resources, fiscal management, partnerships, and program management. Here are some important websites that you may find helpful. Grants.gov is for federal funding opportunities. sam.gov is to register your business with the U.S. government. USA.gov is for entryway to the U.S. federal government by providing information on federal agencies and programs, as well as facilitating access to the benefits and services for which you may be eligible. FedBidsOps.gov is a government point of entry for federal government contract procurement opportunities over $25,000. Benefits.gov is for personal funding, such as funding for education, disaster relief, or healthcare. GovLoans.gov is for personal or business loans. And last but not least, StudentAid.ed.gov is for education-related funding. Congressman Hank Johnson's office would love to give a special thank you to the Georgia Center for Nonprofits, as well as Grants.gov.
So, good morning. This is Judy Cesar from the Grants.gov Program Management Office. I am going to provide you with an overview that we often present to applicants such as yourselves. And it's basically how to register, how to use Grants.gov to search, and how to use Grants.gov to find and apply for federal grants. And you have to excuse my throat. I think I'm having issues with my allergies at the moment. Let's get started. So the topics I'm going to cover today are how to navigate Grants.gov, how to register to be completely registered to submit a federal grant, how to use Grants.gov to search for grants opportunities, what's actually in a funding opportunity, applying using Workspace, the importance of tracking your application to see it through the submission to the agency, and lastly, tips and support resources. So if you go to our website's homepage, it will look similar to this page here. And at the top of the header, you'll see highlighted two tabs, Search Grants and Applicants. This is where you're going to primarily focus at first. Just to give you an idea, Grants.gov has lots of resources on our website. A few years ago, we recorded some little snippets of YouTube videos that provide information to applicants on every process that you can possibly need to know about on Grants.gov and how to use Grants.gov as an applicant. We also have user guides, we have an online help, we have training content. We also have a help desk that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I'll provide that information to you at the end of the presentation. So if you're not familiar with Grants.gov, it would be a good idea to just go to the site and see what information is there and available to you. Several years ago, we set up an area on our website where you can go to navigate the grants lifecycle process, and a lot of what you were provided by Candace this morning, which by the way was an excellent overview of the lifecycle of federal grants. I learned some things myself today, and I've been in this Grants.gov world for a very long time. So getting back to where on our website, we have a page where we call basically the Grants Learning Center, where you can find information about Grants 101. There's grants policy information, as well as you can find out how some federal grants actually got started. There's also grant terminology and so forth. And as well, there are grant events, if we know about them, we'll post them on our website under this section. This would be upcoming grant trainings, conferences, and webinars and such. We also have a place on our website where you can sign up to, we call it our subscriptions page, and you can sign up to receive custom email notifications for federal funding opportunities that are available either at this moment or in the future. So I'm trying to control these slides, and for some reason, okay, here we go. We can pass this, we just discussed this one. So let's go to registration. So let's take a look at the registration page. Candace, could you advance the slides for me? That might be more helpful than me trying to do it. So the registration process begins with applicants going to the SAM, or System for Award Management website at www.sam.gov. This is where, if you haven't registered before, and if you've never submitted a federal grant application, you can go here. You need to go here actually, because again, as Candace mentioned in her talk, that the opportunities, the federal discretionary funding opportunities or grant opportunities posted on grants.gov are mostly for organizations. There are some cases where agencies will post opportunities for individuals, and there is no requirement that you have a UEI or you're a need to go to register on sam.gov. But because most of the opportunities are for organizations, I'm going to cover the sam.gov process as well. So you would go to the sam.gov site and register, and you will receive what we call a Universal Entity Identifier, or UEI, which was formerly known as DUNS number. Here is where the business point of contact at your organization will register for a SAM account. We refer to this person as the eBiz POC. Now, the eBiz POC is the individual that's going to oversee everything or all activities for your organization within the grants.gov site, and will be responsible for affiliating all your organization staff that you want to submit applications, prepare and submit applications on your behalf. Registering for SAM can take up to 2 weeks to complete. So if you haven't started your SAM registration yet, and you are an organization that is planning to submit federal grants, you'll want to do so as soon as possible. There are other items that, everything that you need to provide to get registered on SAM is on their website. Once your SAM registration becomes active, all your organization information, such as your UEI number, your e-business point of contact information, are all transferred electronically from the sam.gov site to grants.gov. And this is, at this time, applicants that have registered in grants.gov can be affiliated with their organization, and the eBiz can assign roles to their accounts. And if you want the latest information, you can click on this link here that I have in the slides that I've also shared with Candace. Please note, though, it's very important that the e-business point of contact renews the sam.gov organization's registration account on an annual basis. And you want to make sure that you renew your account before it expires or becomes inactivated. If you let your account on SAM.gov become inactive, then you'll basically have to, when you do go to reactivate it again, you'll have to go through all the various validation steps. So it takes a little bit longer. So you want to make sure if you're the electronic business point of contact at your organization, that you keep that registration current. To register for grants, for a Grants.gov account, it's pretty simple. You just go on the website and register, and you fill out your name. You create a username and password, and then you can sign up as well to receive subscriptions and newsletters and access to our blog. You don't have to have a Grants.gov account to search the website or to see anything on the public-facing site, but you will need to have an account in order to be affiliated with an organization and or receive roles so that you can create your application and submit it in Grants.gov. There are, we've already talked about the eBiz POC. Again, the eBiz POC is responsible for assigning roles to the applicant users in your website. So the AOR is what we refer to them as really the applicant that submits applications. You must have the AOR role, and it stands for the Applicant Organization Representative. Your eBiz would assign that role to you, as well as what we call the Workspace Manager role. And I'll get into Workspace as we move further into the presentation. Just so you understand, the eBiz POC at your organization can only be one person, but you can have several people affiliated with your organization that have the AOR roles and the Workspace Manager roles. So it's a one-to-many relationship. So just as Candace spoke about earlier, Grants.gov is the place where all the federal grant-making agencies that fund discretionary grant funding opportunities go to create and post their grant funding opportunity announcements, which you will find if you click on the search page, as well as where applicants go to search and find these opportunities. So by clicking on the search page, you'll come to a page that looks very similar to this. And you want to start with what we call the basic search criteria. You can enter a keyword or keywords. You can also enter a funding opportunity number, which often is referred to as a NOFO, which is a Notice of Funding Opportunity Number, or a CFDA or Assistance Listing Number, if you happen to have that. If you scroll down on the left the next navigation, the next section that you'll see is opportunity status. The default for the opportunity status is set to forecasted opportunities, which are potential opportunities that agencies plan to open in the near future, or posted opportunities, which basically mean that the opportunities are currently open and applicants can begin submitting applications. There are also two other statuses, closed and archived. The closed status basically means that these opportunities closed recently, and archived means that all the opportunities that we have posted on the website can be searched for by clicking on the archived status. A lot of people find this valuable when they don't find an opportunity that's currently open and available to apply to. they can look to see if the particular agencies have ever posted anything similar in the past. So it is, I think, a good resource to have for sure. There are certain funding opportunities or types that you can select. Like Candace brought up, you can select a category type. You can select eligibility. You can also narrow your search by selecting a funding agency. So in particular, if you're looking for an education grant, you can narrow your search by selecting the Department of Education's as a smaller range to search for, because there's many, as you can see, many opportunities posted on the site. And if you have a Grants.gov account, you can save your searches, which come in handy later on. So what's actually in a funding opportunity? There's basically five or five sections, I would say. So some agencies use the forecast option to post upcoming funding opportunities, like the estimated posting date or estimated due date that the application will be required to be submitted. Also, the estimated program funding amount and the estimated date that the agency plans to make awards. Not all agencies use the forecast function, but many do. If an agency decides they want to announce this opportunity to the public, they will create what we call a synopsis. And this is what you would come to when you first click on the funding opportunity. This will provide the funding opportunity number, the open date, the close date, and the estimated program funding amount, and the estimated number of awards that the agency plans to make from this particular or through this particular funding opportunity. And if you scroll down through the synopsis, you'll also find a description of the program as well as contact information for the actual program itself. If there's information that you want to see that you're not seeing within the opportunity itself, we encourage you to reach out directly to the agency that's providing the funding. They can give you more information if that's required for you to make decisions as to whether or not you want to actually submit an application. To the right of the synopsis tab is what we call the version history tab. And this is where you can see whether or not the agency has modified the opportunity since it was first posted. And in some cases, you know, an example of a modification could be maybe they extend the deadline, or maybe they change the eligibility criteria or the instructions or so forth and so forth. And so if you do see modifications here, it's a good idea to kind of take a look and see what they've actually changed, particularly if you've already submitted an application. To the right of the version history tab is what we call the related documents tab. And this is often where agencies will upload full announcement documentation that they want you to have as you prepare and submit your application. And lastly, to the right of the related documents tab is the package tab. Here is where you will actually see, you actually can view the funding, the application forms, the standard forms that you'll be required to fill out, in addition to instructions that the agency has prepared and provided for you to guide you through preparing your application. And again, there should be contact information within those instructions, if not in the synopsis, that will help you know who to reach out to at the agency if you have specific programmatic questions and you need assistance from that agency to tell you what actually, basically just to clarify what it is they're looking for as you prepare your application. A few years ago, we set up a space on grants.gov called Workspace. And it's basically a space where you and anybody you want to invite that has a grants.gov account, and this can be anybody, it doesn't have to be someone within your organization, you can invite them into your workspace, this particular space, where you will all basically collaborate on preparing your application before you submit it. This is just a screen capture of what the workspace environment looks like. It is, again, a shared online environment where everyone within the workspace that you've invited in can work as a team simultaneously to fill out the forms that need to be filled out. The individual with the workspace manager role is the one that actually creates a workspace and invites participants into the workspace to prepare the required forms. Again, as we spoke earlier, there's the different account types. There's the eBiz POC and the AOR. And then there's the workspace manager role. So the workspace manager creates the workspace, adds participants to the workspace. The applicant AOR actually is the one that submits the application. And in some cases, individuals can have both of those roles. And in smaller organizations, probably similar to the ones that you all represent, can actually have, one individual can have all roles. They can actually have an account as the eBiz point of contact, or the person that goes into SAM and registers the organization, as well as a separate applicant workspace manager role accounts. So if you are the workspace manager role, you have the ability to add others from either your organization or other organizations by entering their email address, and if you know their username. You also have the ability to remove people from the workspace, and you can also make someone else within the workspace the owner of that workspace if you can no longer manage the workspace. There's different ways to complete the forms. You can use what we call the web forms, which is basically what most people use anymore. You just fill the form out on the website and you're done with it. Or if you happen to be in an area where the internet connectivity is a little unreliable, you can download the forms. There are PDF forms, and you can fill them out offline while you're not connected to the internet. And then when you have a more secure or reliable internet connection, you can upload those forms into the workspace. The forms, both the web form and PDF forms, can both be used within an application submission. There's not a problem with that. Another good thing that people like about Workspace is that you can reuse the forms from other workspaces. And in this case, it helps you basically prepare your application a little bit quicker because you're not entering the same information over and over. So this is typical of what a web form looks like. And this is you working on your browser directly into a form. And anywhere you see a red asterisk within the form field means you must fill it out. It's a required field. These are just samples of what the forms look like as web forms. There are many forms that you'll be asked to add, upload attachments to. So you see those here highlighted. The system will auto-save your content every 5 minutes. And we always recommend that applicants fill out the cover page. We call that the SF424 page first within the application package, because it's going to pre-populate other form fields, and it does help save some time. You're going to save your application in your workspace when you're finished. You'll check for errors, form field validations, and so forth. And then if you decide that you want to fill out the basic PDF forms, you can do so as well. And again, you can submit a workspace that includes both types of forms, both web forms and PDFs. They just look a little different. So here's a screen capture of a PDF, a basic SF424 R&R form. Wherever you see the yellow highlighted fields, you'll see that those are required fields. And you'll get error messages if you don't fill them out. Again, you can reuse workspaces. You can also reuse forms and other workspaces as well, which does help save time. So once your application is prepared, it's ready, all the forms have been filled out, and it's ready for submission, the workspace manager will notify the person with the AOR role, and they will submit the application. It's really important that you track the application to see it through all the different validation checks. Since we set up Workspace, there's much fewer errors on in Grants.gov when applicants submit their applications. So because there's so many validation checks within the workspace, it just makes it so much easier. When you as the AOR submits the application, you should get a confirmation screen just immediately. And in that confirmation screen will be a grant tracking number and the official date and timestamp of the submission. And the person that will receive this information is the AOR who's logged in and submitted, and they'll receive also all this information in email confirmations. So the first email that the AOR will receive is your application has been received by Grants.gov and will be validated. And then the second one you'll receive, it will say either Grants.gov has successfully validated your submission, or no, it was rejected and here's why. Please fix these errors and resubmit. And the third, very important email notification is that your agency has received the agency has retrieved, I should say, the application from Grants.gov, and they have it in their hands. These emails, by the way, come out within seconds to minutes of each other. It doesn't take long to go through that validation. And you'll know it right away if there's an issue. It's important to track the status of your application, like I said earlier. If you want to take a look at what was actually submitted by your agency, once it's submitted, you have access to view the actual PDF zip file. You can do that within the workspace itself, or if you're logged in, you can click on under the applicant tab, track my application, and it'll tell you what the status is and whether or not it's been received by the agency. A few years ago, we set up a mobile app that you can download. You can search on the go using the mobile app. You can save your queries if you have a Grants.gov account. You can get notifications of opportunities that are announced, and you can download that app on either App Store or Google Play. We have a few tips for applicants that we'd like to share. So it's really, really important that you register in SAM.gov early so that that doesn't prevent you from submitting a timely application, as well as submitting early. We always tell people, try to submit the application at least 2 days before it's due, because if you run into any problems, they may not be able to be fixed or, taken care of before the actual deadline. And agencies are typically pretty strict about deadlines. You obviously want to read thoroughly the instructions that the agency has provided and reach out to them if you really have any questions at all about what it is that they're asking you to provide as an applicant, so that you can be competitive in the review. You want to fill out the SF424 standard forms first. Obviously, you want to include enough sufficient program and budget details in your application. And we do recommend that you fill out the optional forms in your application if you have that information. And you want to make sure that you download a compatible PDF software, Adobe Reader. They work best with our forms. Here is the Grants.gov help desk support email address and toll-free phone number. Currently, we are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for federal holidays. We do have a social media presence. We have a blog. We have a newsletter. We provide alerts and such. We have the mobile app. We do have a Twitter page. And you can access all of these things with a Grants.gov account, but you can view our YouTube tutorials without an account. And that's it for me. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. So Candace, how should we go about answering these questions in the chat?
Sure, so I can just read it to you. Someone says, is Workspace somewhat like QuickBooks?
I'm not really familiar with QuickBooks. I think, isn't that more of an Excel spreadsheet? Workspace is just an environment where if you are going to apply and you have the Workspace Manager role, you click on the opportunity and it creates a workspace for you. And it's just a space where the forms are available for you to fill out and the instructions are there as well. So it's where you and it's a shared environment where you and all of your staff within the organization or outside the organization, if they have a Grants.gov account, can go into Workspace, prepare, and submit the application.
Okay. Someone says, is the grants.gov website compatible with the central login.gov?
Yes. If you have issues, call our help desk or email them. If you have issues with login.gov, but it's now a government requirement for security purposes that you have a login.gov account.
Okay, that looks like that was the last question. Okay, no more questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Judy, for lending your expertise today. Tomorrow is our final session of the 3 Series Grants Workshop. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Department of Justice, and AmeriCorps will all be sharing their upcoming grant opportunities. Please register for tomorrow's event if you have not already done so. I hope everyone have a wonderful rest of your day and see everyone on tomorrow.